Hi, everyone. My name is Todd Belfer. I'm your host for The Laundry List. Welcome back. Hope you had a really wonderful week. I was in Kauai with my family and really enjoyed the island of Kauai. We did ATVing. We did the Nepali coast hike. We went to Hanalei Bay, stayed in Hanalei Bay, rented a house there. And it's probably the most beautiful place on earth I've ever been, that North Shore of Kauai. Highly recommend it if anybody is looking at going to Hawaii and not, really not wanting to go to Maui. I would recommend Kauai. And had a really great time with the family. My ex-wife, her boyfriend, me and my boys and Haley, and we had a great time. It was wonderful. And I'm glad to be back, but I got sick on the way back. So I haven't been sick in years. So it's kind of weird to be sick.
That's the saddest story, Todd. Got sick coming back from Hawaii. Yeah. I feel so bad for you. That sounds terrible.
Yeah. So now I'm binge watching documentaries and Suits. This show called Suits.
Is that the Meghan Markle show?
Yeah. Yeah, it is.
Wow.
It's very good.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. And how about you guys? How's Blake? How are you? How are you, Soraya? Blake, you go first.
Yeah, I'm good today. I had ups and downs. I've been traveling a fair amount. I was just in Spokane this last weekend visiting my good friend Brett and his new baby, and it was good to see him. And but it was also, with the different kind of different path my life is taking, it was also a little strange to be around him and be by myself. But
I remember those days.
But overall, pretty darn good today.
Good. And Charles?
Well, I'm different than you, Todd. I can't afford Kauai. I've been here in the 118 degree weather. It's been hot. I don't know if you saw, but it's like 48 straight days over 110. And last week was record. So I was thinking of you while sweating and dying in our shop. But other than that, life's good.
Good. Yeah. I see Proton is making new, and I don't want to identify Charles with Proton all the time because that's cheating himself of his true identities and true self. Proton is his business, but there's a lot more to Charles than just Proton.
Not much, but yes. No.
And Soraya, how you doing? You watched my baby girl all week.
I did. I spent some good quality time with Gigi while Todd was in the North Shore of Kauai. I did get to escape that 120 degree weather for 10 whole days. And I got to tell you, when I stepped out of the airport, it was like being on the inside of an oven. I was melting, and it was 10 o'clock at night. It was ridiculous, but I had a good reset, I feel like. And it was just me and the dog for 9 days.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you doing that, and I know she does, so thank you. We have a very special guest today, but before we introduce our guest, Shea, Charles, would you be so kind to read the laundry list? And Shea, if you want to listen to this laundry list, and then also the promises, and maybe in your talk, you can speak to ones that really come to mind for you. So, Charles, take it away.
Sure thing, Todd. This is the laundry list. These are traits that we identify with, that we recover from. And the first one is we became isolated and afraid of people and authority figures. Number 2, we became approval seekers and lost our identity in the process. Number 3, we are frightened by angry people and any personal criticism. Number 4, we either became alcoholics, marry them, or both, or find another compulsive personality such as a workaholic to fulfill our sick abandonment needs. Number 5, we live life from the viewpoint of victims, and we are attracted by that weakness in our love and friendship relationships. Number 6, we have an overdeveloped sense of responsibility, and it's easier for us to be concerned with others rather than ourselves. And this enables us not to look too closely at our own faults. Number 7, we get guilt feelings when we stand up for ourselves instead of giving in to others. Number 8, we are addicted to excitement. Number 9, we confuse love and pity and tend to love people we can pity and ultimately rescue. Number 10, we have stuffed our feelings from our traumatic childhoods and have lost the ability to feel or express our feelings because it hurts so much, and that's also known as denial. Number 11, Todd, is we judge ourselves harshly and have a very low sense of self-esteem. Number 12, we are dependent personalities who are terrified of abandonment and will do anything to hold on to a relationship in order not to experience those painful abandonment feelings. And we often receive those from living with sick people who were never there emotionally for us. Number 13, alcoholism is a family disease, and we became para-alcoholics, also known as codependent, and took on the characteristics of that disease even though we never picked up a drink. And finally, para-alcoholics or codependents are reactors rather than actors. Tony A., 1978.
Beautiful. Thank you, Charles. Well, that's what we have. And then once we do the work and listen to the podcast, here's what we get, the promises.
All right. So these are the promises. One, we will discover our real identities by loving and accepting ourselves. Two, our self-esteem will increase as we give ourselves approval on a daily basis. Three, fear of authority figures and the need to people please will leave us. Four, our ability to share intimacy will grow inside us. Five, as we face our abandonment issues, we will be attracted by strengths and become more tolerant of weaknesses. Six, we will enjoy feeling stable, peaceful, and financially secure. Seven, we will learn how to play and have fun in our lives. Eight, we will choose to love people who can love and be responsible for themselves. Nine, healthy boundaries and limits will become easier for us to set. 10, fears of failure and success will leave us as we intuitively make healthier choices. 11, with help from our ACA support group, we will slowly release our dysfunctional behaviors. 12, gradually with our higher powers' help, we will learn to expect the best and get it.
Excellent. Well, I'd like to welcome everybody. I'd like to welcome Shea, who I've known for, probably, I'm guessing 5 or 6 years. She's worked with us at the restaurant Morning Squeeze in numerous capacities, and most recently is the director of marketing. And we also use Shea to do marketing and online marketing for the Laundry List and some of our other portfolio companies. And it's a real pleasure to get to know her, to get to know her, especially over the last year. She's just a heartfelt soul that I'm just glad to have in my life. So Shea, welcome to the podcast.
Whoa, that was quite the introduction. Thank you so much, Todd. That was very sweet. So kind. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it's our pleasure. Really, it's our pleasure. I was happy to hear that you wanted to come on.
Yeah.
Yeah,
after being
awesome.
here for the last couple of ones, watching you guys record and listening, I just was like, gosh, I almost feel like this is like the perfect place for me in like a weird way, just experiencing all the conversations that you guys are having. I'm like, man, I can relate to that.
Yeah, and it feels good to talk about this stuff. And,
totally.
For 95% of my life, it's like you just feel like you can't talk about this stuff. So
yeah,
this is like a safe place, and it's very healing for me, to do this work and to have people on, and for me to talk about my stuff and to listen to what other people have to say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
So let's get into it. So, you've listened to a bunch of episodes. Mm-hmm. You know what we do here. Yeah. So why don't you kind of like give us the high level of your trauma, childhood stuff that has created some blockages in your adult life, and just give us a little bit of backstory, and then you can get into some of the work you're doing today to create a life that you want for yourself.
Sure. Absolutely. Well, I guess I'll kind of start, I grew up very normal, probably about as normal as you can get. I mean, a very loving family, parents that are together still, 2 older brothers who were model citizens, and was always very blessed for that. And it felt like a little bit of me as a kid was like, man, I gotta mess something up in here. This is too good. This is too good to be true. This family's too perfect. So I kind of had this weird idea and perception of myself growing up that I was kind of the fuck up of the family, kind of the bad Neil, the bad egg, the black sheep. This is all completely, something that I created. My parents never treated me that way. My brothers never treated me that way. But my brothers are incredible people. And they were kind of hard to live up to, as a young girl. And, So, and then, being a teenager, you make mistakes, you do things that they might not have done that makes you feel like, man, I'm really messing up. So that's kind of one thing that I've gone through is just kind of, I've always been incredibly, incredibly hard on myself to a fault, to the point where, people don't understand why I'm reacting to things in the way that I am. My boyfriend is often says to me, this doesn't warrant the reaction that you're giving right now. Why is this making you so upset? And it's just, I'm so hard on myself. And it's just strange because my parents were never that hard on me growing up. My brothers were never that hard on me growing up. So it's funny, the things that you kind of create in your own, the problems that you create for yourself that you don't even know why or where they come from. I mean, I still look back and wonder where all of that came from.
And when you're a hard critic on yourself, especially when you're young, it's like that really lowers your self-esteem. Mm-hmm. It really affects just your whole aura of like who you are. And then there's byproducts of that come out. You can become passive aggressive. Mm-hmm. You can become isolating. There's a lot of different things that can happen from that. But yeah, I mean, I know for me, like I'm a huge critic of myself, and all the people around me that love me are like, why are you so hard on yourself? Just let it go. Mm-hmm. But they can tell you that all they want. But we have to make the decision to let it go. Mm-hmm. And I know I have a lot of tools to work with that, like mantras and meditation and prayer and a lot of things I do. But if I don't do those things, that inner critic definitely has a louder voice.
Absolutely. Yeah. And like you said, that leads to a lot of that low self-esteem can lead to a lot of other problems in your life. And that's kind of what happened for me. That kind of led me to a really, really an abusive relationship that I was in for in my young adulthood. I was, in high school and college, and, that relationship turned very toxic and very abusive physically and emotionally. And, growing out of those bad habits that I learned from that relationship. I mean, when I say abusive, I mean mutually. It was very, toxic in all of the ways that he was talking to me, I learned to talk back. And then what ended up happening was I started treating other people this way because I was learning these habits and these things. I started being really ugly to my parents. I started fighting with them more. And I mean, I remember one day my mom looked at me and was like, you are like a different person. Like, who are you? This isn't even the Shea that would normally be talking to me. You don't even sound like this person. So that's kind of what happened. I turned my back on kind of my family and my friends. I, let this relationship really take over my life to the extent of it almost taking my life. And that's kind of what got me to Arizona. I got out of that relationship. And
how'd you get out of it? Because that's hard to get out of those.
I know. I was kind of trying to be
toxic, abusive
broad
relationships.
Yeah. The sad thing about, and the really unfortunate and crappy thing about being in a position like that is that it doesn't really end until it hits rock bottom, I guess, or like is as bad as it can possibly get without like people dying. So, jail was involved, hospitals were involved. And I remember I actually went to jail, and I remember getting out, and my best friend picked me up, and she came in and talked to me while I was in jail. And she was horrified. I was horrified. We were 19 or 20. And I just looked at her through the glass. I said, please don't tell my mom. The last thing I need, I was going to tell her. I just didn't want somebody else to tell her. I didn't want her to hear it from my friend. I wanted her to hear it from me. And my friend had already called my mom, and I was just so devastated. Thank God she called me, and that was the right thing to do. I was being selfish. But thank God she had already called my mom, and I got out of jail and I called my mom, knowing that she already knew, and she answered the phone, and I just said, I am so sorry. I like relive this moment all the time. I said, I'm so sorry. And she was quiet for a minute. I thought, she's trying to figure out what to say. And I could just hear, like, in the most serious and stable voice, she said, I'm not. She said, I'm not sorry. And I remember in that moment being like, oh, I just lost my mom. Like, my mom was just, like, she's not sorry. She hates me. She, like, this is, and she said, I'm not sorry. You wouldn't have learned any other way. I'm not sorry that this happened. I'm not sorry you were in jail 5 minutes ago, because now you know where this is going to take you in your life and that it has to stop. And it did. And
so after you got out of jail, it ended, the relationship?
Yep. Yeah, it ended. It actually, we went to the same university at the time. So actually, I want to say maybe a month or two later, I mean, probably, 6 weeks later, I saw him on campus for the first time. And I actually ran. This sounds wild. I've never told this story, actually. I was late for an exam, actually, and I was running. I wasn't running yet. I was speed walking through the parking lot, and I heard my name, and I turned around, and I saw him. And I turned around and started running. And then, I don't know, I stopped running, and I turned around. And I had a conversation with him, and he ended up kind of breaking down right there, and almost got me back. I almost fell back into that. But it's kind of one of those things. Once your mom knows what you did, I already told her, and now I can't go back. My mom already knew. So, so thankfully, I was able to, I felt like the main way that I was going to be able to break through that whole entire chapter in my life was to just leave Colorado, just start fresh somewhere, meet new people. It felt like that was something that was necessary in my life at the moment. And that's exactly what I did. And moved out to Arizona, and I never looked back.
We talk a lot on this podcast about one of the laundry list traits, which is that we will stay in a relationship no matter what, because we don't want to face the fear of abandonment. Mm-hmm. Those feelings are way too strong. So we will stay in it no matter what, because, like in codependency, you almost become like one person. Mm-hmm. There's not two people. It's like one person, and you can't survive without that other person. I know I've experienced that. I know everybody in, this podcast has, and it's scary. Like, I can't survive without this person in my life,
Yeah.
But then once you go through it, it's like, oh my God, I got through it. It's okay.
Yeah. And it was almost like, that's what it felt like. I can't survive without this person. And then everything happened, and it was like, I might not survive with this person. And that was kind of the turning point was, okay, yeah, your life is on the line now. So.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, that's great that you had that experience, and, you made it through, and you became a stronger person from it.
Absolutely. And I think, one of the hardest parts about it is I think that all those horrible habits that I learned in that relationship, it's almost 10 years later, and I'm still breaking those habits. I still find myself doing something or saying something like, oh, that was wrong. That was definitely not what I meant to say, or something that I would have said back then. But I'll always consciously think, oh, that was not right. That was the old Shea. That's kind of like Blake, it's the 6-year-old Shea. Like, we don't need that anymore. That's, but yeah.
Yeah. And we talk a lot in this podcast about that, like the 6-year-old, the teenager,
mm-hmm.
The 6-year-old's the scared little kid mm-hmm. who just needs love and support and someone to hug him. The teenager wants to fuck shit up and just blow everything up and just like mm-hmm. terrorize everybody. And then the adult, who's like the sensible, logical one who kind of hopefully runs your life. And I know for me, like, I get in the teenager a little bit, but I'm mostly in that 6-year-old scared little boy, like I'm in trouble. No one loves me. No one cares for me. And then that's when my critic comes in. Like
Right.
my critic comes in, like I'm a terrible, business owner. I'm a terrible friend. I'm a terrible son. I'm a terrible father. And I just start playing the tape. And, that's not a healthy tape to play. So how do you get out of your critic, your, inner critic?
Man, it's hard. I feel like that's one of the main things that I feel like I struggle with the most to this day, is trying to talk myself off the ledge and because I don't have low self-esteem, and I don't think poorly of myself, but man, it's those intrusive thoughts will just really ruin a day. And I think for me, it's I'd like to, as much as I wish that I could repeat mantras to myself every day, that doesn't work for me. And what does, though, is just being with the people that I like to be with. My boyfriend, and Carlos, he's the best person I've ever met in my whole life. He just has an energy about him that makes you feel like everything's going to be okay, And so that's honestly what I do when I'm feeling like those intrusive thoughts are just too much. I go to him, and we'll go do something together, or, I'll let him know I don't feel good today. And he'll say, well, let's go to the pool. Let's go. He's really good at knowing kind of what I need in that moment to start to feel better. But, man, though, that's one of the hardest things, I think, is to really talk yourself out of feeling like a real big bag of poop,
Yeah.
But yeah, I think just spending time with the people that make you feel good. That's really what I do.
Yeah. And I try to tell people around me that love me and care for me, like, hey, if I start doing this shit, like, call me out on it.
Yeah.
Like if I start saying, oh, I'm such a piece of shit, I can't believe I did that. Oh my God, I'm such a loser. Like, call me out on that, because words are powerful. Words are energy. It's frequency. And it's like, if I'm saying that stuff, like, I'm creating a really horrible future if I'm starting to do that stuff. That my karmic future is not looking good if I start to put all that energy out there. And, I encourage everyone around me to, like, call me out on that stuff, and
Absolutely.
so Blake, you're sort of in that, what do you call it? The Gen Z? What era are you guys? Are you millennials?
I'm a millennial.
Blake, are you a millennial?
Barely, like by
I think
the skin of
I
my
think
teeth.
I'm not a millennial. I think I'm too young to be a millennial. I'm right on the cusp. I have some generation dysmorphia. I don't know.
You don't have an identity.
I don't have one.
Well, you guys are close in age. So what do you have for Shea? Growing up in social media and growing up and with the internet. I mean, I didn't grow up with the internet. I didn't grow up with social media. So, I don't have that experience of, like, having a screen in my hand from the time I'm a young kid. Right. So, I think later on in my, like, teenage years, the screen came into effect, but I'm still of the generation that I remember, like, playing outside and not having, like, video games had just come out, like the GameCube, and, like, but no, I think the one thing I'll have for Shea is, what would you say to someone that maybe we can save them from, not we're trying to save them, but what would you say to Shea that hadn't gone to jail yet and maybe is, like, seeing some things in his or her relationship that are unhealthy or toxic or whatever? Like, what would you say to that 18, 19, 20-year-old guy or girl that, like, knows that what they're doing is not the right path, but hasn't experienced enough pain to, like, have a, like, transformative kind of experience?
Yeah. That's actually a really hard question because
like what would you say to 18 or 19-year-old Shea, knowing what you know now, that might be able to like help them?
I think one thing that I would, if it were me, if I'm talking to myself let's say I'm talking to my 18-year-old self, I would probably ask myself, do you see this person? Do you see your life with this person? I mean, you would think that I would have asked myself this, but back then you're not thinking clearly, right? So like, I probably would ask myself, do you imagine yourself getting old with this person?
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't think I could back then. That relationship was so toxic. I knew that it wasn't long. I knew it wasn't going to last. But it's that fear of abandonment that I literally could not get over. That it was like, I'm stuck. I'm stuck in this hole of like, this is hurting me. This person is physically hurting me. But I want to be in this relationship because I'm so scared to leave, but I'm hurting. And it was just, I think, and outweighing, do the positive things that he gives you and does for you outweigh all of these really awful things? Because they didn't. And if I would have tried to say that they did, that would have been a lie,
Which 18-year-old you might have said, right?
Yeah. But I'll tell you what, Blake, I don't think I could have said I don't think that anyone could have said, I believe this with my whole heart. I don't believe that anyone could have said anything to me to get me to leave or understand how much danger I was in. I will never forget that conversation with my mom. She just said, you would have never have learned. And she knew. My own mother tried to talk me out of it, out of this relationship. She knew, she knew what was going on. And she said, you would not have learned any other way. And she was freaking right. I would not have learned any other way. I lost friends over this relationship, like very close friends, best friends. I lost, people that I was very close with over this relationship. So I guess to really, truly, honestly answer your question, there's nothing that I could have said to myself back then, but I would have definitely tried, definitely would have tried because terrible experience.
Charles, what do you have for Shea today?
A couple things. First, Todd, I had to look. I'm Generation X. I didn't know that.
What am I, Charles? 1995.
Fucking millennial.
You're a millennial.
Yeah.
But so
I think I'm the only Gen Z here.
Todd, the thing that
97.
disappoints me the most about this is I'm Generation X, and I'm saddened to find there's 3 generations that come after me. So, you want to talk about personal criticism? I'm now realizing that I'm old. There's 3 generations after me.
Charles and I are going to go look at retirement homes after this.
All right, so that's the first thing. So, I'm Generation X, and I didn't know that, but I had to look that up. Second thing, how great is this, Todd and Blake and Soraya? She just said about her boyfriend that he's the most incredible person that she's met in her entire life. One, what an amazing thing to be able to say about your partner. I hope everyone listening strives to find that. Second thing is that she feels comfortable enough, Todd, she answered your question. She feels comfortable and secure enough in the relationship when she's feeling down that she can go to him and know that he's going to bring her up. Right. And not utilize that as a weapon, which we all have been in relationships where I'm feeling down. They weaponize that for control, right? Or they weaponize that for, some sort of upper advantage. And to know that she can feel she's comfortable, confident, secure enough in the relationship and in this man that when she's down, he's going to say, hey, let's change the present. All right. Like she said, let's go to the pool. Let's just change the present. Right. And isn't that always what our solution is changing the present in some way with some sort of affirmation or change of action or change of scenery or change of just thought. So what a beautiful thing to be able to say that about your partner. I love that. I want to find that as well. So I love, so that's the first thing that I want to hit on, that one, I'm old, and two, what a beautiful thing. I think that's what we're all looking for, is someone that we can say that about and feel comfortable when we're down.
Yeah, we feel safe with too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and to pick them up. I love that. I've been in relationships that was a tool to kind of put me down more, right? To either get what you want out of me, or to just kind of control and manipulate, hitting on our fears, anxieties, or criticism and shortcomings. So we talked about what it was like, right? We talked about this relationship. Your mother could have put a gun to your head and said, leave this guy, and it wasn't going to happen, right? We know that situation too. So let's talk more about this relationship with Carlos. Let's talk more about today. We love the healing, healthy relationship, right? And it's what we're striving for, is to have better relationships. So give me an example of, you had mentioned early on too, and I'll get to this question. You mentioned early on too that you overreact on certain things, right? So I've been in relationships and then underreact when it was necessary, right? So it's like they come to me and say, "Hey, I don't know, for example, the IRS called, you owe $4 million." I'm like, yeah, whatever. But then you ate all of the Captain Crunch? Are you fucking kidding me? You ate all the cereal, right? And then overreact about something stupid. It's like, you can go to the store and get more, right? So let's talk about that conflict resolution. Let's hear about that in your relationship when beyond when you're feeling down, conflict.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I will say that Carlos got the brunt of me. I still had I hadn't even started growing out of all of those bad habits when I met Carlos. So I still had all of this really negative idea of how a relationship worked and how communication worked. And I think he was pretty taken aback at, our first fight, those things, because I think he was shocked at the way I handled myself. It was poor. I would yell and name call or cuss or all of these things that I learned from this really toxic, abusive relationship. So it was hard at first. Both of us kind of figuring out, me trying to grow and be a new person and grow out of all these habits, him trying to understand why I had these habits and kind of where they came from and why I'm trying to change and be different. And I will say that now I feel like, we've gone through phases where we'll fight, we won't talk for a day. And then we go to bed angry or whatever it is. And we've really, in this last year, we've really talked a lot about, fighting and conflict and how we really have to nail down the way we communicate during times like that. So, and most of the time I have to admit, it's me, it's my emotions. I'm just a very emotional person, and I'm also very empathetic. He lacks a lot of empathy during certain moments. I will say that that's changed a little bit in the last 4 years. But I think for me, the main thing during our conflict is getting across how you're feeling without blaming the other person. So it's not, you make me feel this way. Well, I feel this way. And I think it's when you do X, Y, and Z, it's like literally we have to talk to each other in a way that is so black and white. There is no gray, like saying things that have already been said, or that's what we have found the most success in, is like me being like, okay, I said it already once. I answered that question once. We literally just had this fight the other night. We were fighting the other night. And he kept asking me this question. And I was like, but I already answered the question. Did you hear my answer? No. Okay, ask me the question again. He asked me the question. Okay, I'm going to give it the same answer again. And it's literally, it was that was the conversation that we had. It was like, okay, where is the breakdown? We have to find out where this breakdown is right now, because I can't go to bed like this. Or, this fight, we're going to keep having this same fight over and over and over again if we can't find the breakdown. And I would have to admit that about 95% of our fights are miscommunication. About 95. Him not understanding why what he did that upset me, or me not understanding what I did that upset him or why he's feeling some type of way. You know, one thing that I will say that he's gotten incredible at over the years is talking about his feelings and just telling me how, I mean, I used to not be able to even get him to open up at all. And now he'll let me know, hey, I didn't like that. That made me feel bad. And I'll be like, oh my God, this is exactly what I was just telling you. It just happened the other day. He's like, hey, when you did this, it made me feel like this. And I was like, holy cow, I had no idea. And then I'm like replaying that scenario like, man, I had no idea that would have made him feel that way, but noted, you know, not doing that again or not saying that again. So I think that's, as far as conflict is concerned,
healthy communication.
Yeah, just as black and white as it can be, and understanding exactly what that person is saying, not just nodding and saying, okay, yeah, because you're watching the TV, or like, you know what I mean? Like just sitting down and having those conversations, I think has been the best for us, for sure.
I love it. I mean, we're going to have conflict. That's human nature when two different people are together. Right?
Oh yeah. So. Oh yeah. And we're both Libras. So it's been like a long 4 years.
You gotta have healthy conflict.
Yep.
If couples tell me they never fight, I'm like, well,
they're
your
not
days
talking.
are numbered.
They're not talking.
Yeah.
Your days are numbered. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Soraya, let's move to you.
So when I was 18 or 19, I entered a serious relationship, and I was with him for a couple of years, and it was like you said, it was mutually toxic. Mm-hmm. And I think that a big part in growing up is taking accountability in where you went wrong in your own relationship. And that was something that I had a hard time coming to terms with. Mm-hmm. For a very long time, it was all his fault. Yes. He was the abusive one. Mm-hmm. He was the problem. I did nothing wrong. And it was only until I went into therapy very recently that I discovered what my actions were and where I was toxic and how I reacted poorly to situations. Mm-hmm. And granted, a lot of those are learned in those relationships that you're in, but you still have to take accountability in your actions and apply that accountability towards your new relationships, which obviously you've been doing. What do you think for you has been the hardest thing to take accountability for as you're learning to communicate through your relationships? And
gosh, you guys are tough. These questions are tough.
Good question, good exhale.
Yeah, wow. You know, I think, I mean, you make such a great point about taking accountability. I mean, it's hard to admit that it was mutually abusive. You know, it's hard to admit that you used to talk to someone real backwards, and it's hard. It doesn't feel good. It's shameful, you know, but at the same time, if we couldn't take accountability in these things, we wouldn't be growing. If I were to answer your question about the hardest thing to take accountability for, and I think that this probably leans more into like regret, but I think it's hard for me to come to terms with how long I let everything go on for, and letting someone put their hands on me, and just. I don't know how to word this, but taking accountability of those decisions that I made, that's hard. Because if I had a daughter, I would, you know, tell her, you should never let never let a man put his hands on you. That's what my mother told me growing up, you know. There's no reason for me to have ever been in that situation. Is there ever any reason for anyone to be in that situation? No, but people who experience that maybe as a child with their parents, like they might fall into that later. I didn't, you know, I never saw an abusive relationship in my life. So I think that's what's hard for me is to take accountability for why it happened. I know I'm responsible for it, and I can say, you know, that I did certain things, and I can take accountability for that. But I think just the whole thing as a whole, it's just hard. It's hard to admit that you let someone do that to you, or you let yourself be treated that way. I don't know if that's a good answer, but
Yeah, no, that's a perfect answer.
I think that's the hardest thing. Is just really forgiving yourself for letting it all happen.
Absolutely.
And maybe that's more what it is rather than taking accountability, is just kind of being more forgiveful to yourself for the whole thing. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that's a good question.
You touched on something that I actually wanted to go into a little bit. If you had a daughter that was in your situation, how do you think that you would react to it? Do you think you'd react the same way as your mother did?
My mother is so understanding. She's an angel on earth. She was never angry at me. I'm very emotional. So I have to be honest, no, I don't. I think that I would have been, what are you thinking? What are you doing? You're with this guy that's beating the shit out of you. What are you doing? My mom's like, why? Or what's going on? What are you feeling? Why would you it's not, she never came at me like, why? It was more of like, I'm sorry that you're going through this. And I hope to take some of her wisdom, as I grow. But I am so much more emotional in that sense. And I truly, I hope that if I ever am in that position, that I can remember my mom's reactions and the way she treated me in those situations. And it was never, what are you doing? I can't, freaked out or upset or angry or mad or nothing like that. It was always, I think that it was because her heart was breaking inside, that she felt like she didn't want to show that on the outside. And that's probably, I don't know, she's the strongest woman ever. But I don't think that I would have reacted to my daughter the way my mom reacted to me. I think that I would be much more, even having gone through it. Mm-hmm. I'm just so much more emotional and reactive in my personality. But I would like to think that if I'm ever there, I can keep my shit together. But bullets are flying at that point.
Right.
Actually, I'll be honest, the person who took it the hardest were my brothers. One was extremely understanding and drove out to see me and make sure I was okay. And the other was very not understanding and was very angry and was very confused and could not wrap his head around the fact that his younger sister, his pretty tough younger sister, who he helped raise, let this happen. So
yeah. And maybe if we do another follow-up to this podcast, it could be, why do men and women allow themselves to be abused in relationships? Mm-hmm. And we know one of the answers is the fear of abandonment and not wanting to face those feelings. Yeah. But I think there's more to that as well, not just the feelings of abandonment. There's more to that.
Wanting to fix someone, wanting to, help them. Yeah. That was a lot of my situation was, I know there's good inside there, and I know that I can bring that out. And I was very wrong.
I was in a relationship in my early 20s, probably, just like you were describing. I mean, there was no physical abuse, but my parents didn't talk to me for a year. I would have to hide her car. Mm-hmm. So my friends and my parents didn't see her car there. Yeah. And I can lie and say she wasn't there. And, they wouldn't even see her. They wouldn't even go. They wouldn't even be in the same room with her. What did I do? I was at the jewelry store looking for an engagement ring because I didn't want her to leave.
Yep. 100%.
And, I finally broke down to my dad and a couple of friends and said, I need to get out of this. And they had to help me and carry me through it. Mm-hmm. But boy, those feelings are so strong. So strong. And especially if you put alcohol on it.
Yeah.
It's just it's overwhelmingly strong.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think for me, when I was in a relationship in that type of situation, it was like the bads were so bad that the goods felt like a dopamine hit straight to your brain.
100%.
It was, and that's how you felt like there was good in them because the bad was so bad that the good was exceptional, amazing, the greatest thing to ever happen. Yeah, and you're holding on to that
and rare.
Yeah,
and they were rare too. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
You're just holding on to that and hoping that eventually that's all there is good.
Mm-hmm.
You're willing to put up with that bad because the good is so good.
Yeah, you nailed it.
Well, any last thoughts for our listeners, Shea, before we end the podcast?
Oh man, I just hope if anybody listening is going through anything like that to know that there's better out there for sure, and that they can reach out to anybody for help. Literally anybody.
There's better out there.
There's
I mean,
always
that is
better out there.
that
I mean,
is
so
that
simply
sentence
put.
right there. There's better out there.
It's,
What a powerful, simple way to put it.
Yes.
yeah.
But the problem is we're the ones that don't believe it. Everyone else believes it.
I know.
Family, friends, but it's like, if I don't believe it, I'm not going to leave. You know?
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, yeah. Thank you so much for coming on. That was great. It's amazing how quick an hour goes by.
I know it.
And, yeah, we're definitely going to have you back on in 6 months and check in with you. And,
Great.
you know, I love you. I love your boyfriend. He's a sweetheart.
We should get him on here. He'd be
We
fun.
should get him on here.
You got to meet him,
We'd love to.
Charles.
I got to meet this most incredible guy. That's my takeaway from this is if you're with someone and you can't say it's the most incredible person that I've ever met, leave.
You know, Charles, he's almost as handsome as you are. It's pretty close. Well, thank you, Shea. We really appreciate it. If you want to come on the podcast, please email Soraya. Or if you want a Red Book, please leave reviews on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, wherever you watch our podcast. And Soraya, what's that email?
You're going to email the laundry list podcast at gmail.com. But more importantly, you can go to our website, thelaundrylistpodcast.com.
Yay.
Wow.
It's live. It's up and running. It's beautiful. Shea and I both worked on it. It looks great. So definitely check it out. It's got everything you need on there. So thelaundrylistpodcast.com.
Can they request
Excellent.
a free book on that website?
They can. There is a little
Yay.
message center that they can send us a message and it'll go straight to my email
Can they
Fun.
find guaranteed happiness?
if they try.
All right, I'm going there.
All right.
Well, thank you so much. We really appreciate it, Shea. And please, everybody listening, be nice to my friend this week. And we will see you next week on The Laundry List.